an era synonymous with tough cowboys, adventurous pioneers, and the infamously captivating saloon girls. But what led women to choose this notorious line of work? The role of a saloon girl in the Wild West varied widely, from entertaining in raucous saloons and dance halls to the less illustrious cribs. Thomas J. Dimsdale, Montana's first newspaper publisher, described a typical hurdy-gurdy house as a venue where women, known as hurdy-gurdies, would dance with patrons for a significant fee of $1 in gold. In these settings, the boundary between dancing and providing sexual services was often blurred, especially in small, cramped apartments known as cribs. In places like Los Angeles, these cribs were sparse, offering little more than a bed and a wash basin. A select few women found employment in upscale brothels or parlor houses, where luxury was the standard, and the environment was managed by shrewd businesswomen known as madams. These establishments, as reported by Legends of America, were lavishly decorated and provided top-notch liquor, cigars, and food. They also featured card games and other forms of entertainment. Women working in these high-end locations were seen as more desirable and skilled than the typical saloon girls and received better compensation for their services. Maddie Silks of Denver is a notable example. Celebrated by historian Clark Sechrist, she saw her sporting life as a businesswoman as a profitable venture. The gray area of legality. In the Old West, the legal status of prostitution was a complex tapestry dictated by local ordinances. Some historians note that prostitution was tolerated to a degree, with madams required to obtain licenses for their establishments. This system provided a significant income stream for the cities involved. Conversely, bordellos were often subjected to fines, roughly $8 monthly, as a cost of doing business discreetly within a locality. Interestingly, many local authorities opted to overlook these operations, acknowledging the substantial economic benefits they brought to their communities. This ambiguous legal environment created pockets where the saloon girl profession could flourish in certain towns, while it faced suppression in others. The saloon girl's other role, serving drinks. Beyond their more intimate services, many saloon girls also had the task of selling drinks to the patrons. This role was an integral part of the saloon's operation, contributing to the establishment's lively atmosphere and financial success. Saloon girls' primary role, selling drinks. Dispelling a common misconception, it's important to note that not all saloon girls provided intimate services. A significant number of these industrious women earned their livelihood by selling drinks to patrons, rather than engaging in adult companionship. Drinks in saloons ranged in price from 10 to 75 cents, and the saloon girls earned a commission from each sale. This pricing strategy allowed saloon owners to reap profits while fairly compensating their female staff. At the time, a saloon girl could earn about $1.10 a week, which would approximate $200 in contemporary currency. The respect for saloon girls. Despite the Wild West's clear social hierarchy, saloon girls occupied a unique position within it. While women of the era typically conformed to the roles of wives, mothers, and daughters, reliant on men, saloon girls defied these norms, often incurring the disapproval of more traditionally minded women. Yet, within the male-dominated society of the Old West, saloon girls were both respected and desired due to their relative scarcity. Men found comfort in their company and were generally respectful, perhaps due to the girls' approachability and the relaxed atmosphere of the saloons. Saloon owners were acutely aware of the value these women brought to their establishments and took measures to ensure their safety and respectful treatment. The repercussions for mistreating saloon girls were severe, ranging from being banned from the premises to community ostracization, and in extreme cases, could escalate to physical confrontations or even fatal outcomes. Saloon girls' diverse duties. In addition to serving drinks and socializing with customers, saloon girls had a variety of other responsibilities. These could include everything from managing the bar to providing entertainment, such as singing or playing piano. Their roles were multifaceted and crucial to the vibrant culture of the saloons they worked in. The versatile roles of saloon girls. Saloon girls of the Old West were adept multitaskers, assuming a spectrum of tasks that went far beyond any sexual connotations. These women were the life of the saloon, primarily engaging in wholesome entertainment such as singing, engaging in lively conversations and dancing. Their charisma and social skills were their trade tools, distinguishing them from their contemporaries, the shady ladies, the term used for actual sex workers of the time. While shady ladies were involved in direct prostitution, working under madams in brothels or independently, saloon girls maintained a degree of respectability through their talents in non-sexual entertainment. In contrast to the saloon girls, women who worked in brothels held a somewhat loftier status, being openly involved in adult companionship, hygiene, and cosmetics among saloon girls. The challenges of maintaining good hygiene in the rugged West were significant, with daily baths, teeth brushing, and hair washing not being the norm. Before the invention of shampoo in the late 1800s, women relied on plain soap for hair care, which often occurred only once a month. Saloon girls, understanding the value of cleanliness, kept basins in their rooms for personal hygiene, despite the scarcity of products like deodorant and toothpaste, luxuries that only became available at the tail end of the century. Nonetheless, makeup was not entirely absent amongst the women of the Wild West. While proper society ladies shied away from cosmetics, actresses, saloon girls, and prostitutes occasionally used them. They applied concoctions containing carbonic acid and aluminum or calcium salts for rosy cheeks and lips, and even experimented with hair dyes, pushing the boundaries of personal expression in an era of limited resources. The hardships and hazards saloon girls endured. Saloon girls were not shielded from the rough and perilous environment of the Wild West. Their day-to-day existence was fraught with dangers that ranged from the volatile behavior of patrons to the societal stigma attached to their profession. They navigated a world where the law was often unenforced or skewed against them, and physical safety was a constant concern. Despite the camaraderie and relative security provided by the saloons, these women faced risks such as abuse, exploitation, and the ever-present threat of disease, all of which they had to confront with resilience and ingenuity. Their stories are a testament to their strength and the harsh realities of Wild West life, the trials and tribulations of saloon girls. Life as a saloon girl in the Old West was fraught with peril and hardship. While some women turned to saloon work to escape the grueling toil of farm life, they quickly realized that this new line of work carried its own set of grave risks, including the threats of violent death and sexual assault. The men of the Old West could become overly possessive and aggressive towards saloon girls, creating potentially life-threatening situations. In one harrowing incident, a saloon girl suffered both physical and emotional trauma after being assaulted and insulted by a patron. The saloon's allure often brought in those with troubled pasts, necessitating that the girls tread cautiously in a world of unpredictable dangers. With time, as saloon girls aged, they found themselves confronting the bleak prospects of aging in a profession with a limited shelf life and scant alternative employment opportunities. Social support structures were minimal, and some faced such profound despair that they resorted to suicide or fell prey to illness and substance abuse. Violence against women was a stark reality of the Old West, with saloon girls standing among the most vulnerable. Sexual violence was pervasive, and the pursuit of justice was nearly impossible due to the absence of protective legislation. Reports of rape were rare, as women were acutely aware that their assailants were unlikely to face consequences. The tragic stories of violence against saloon girls are numerous. One such tale is of Molly Scott, whose life was abruptly ended by her husband in a fit of rage. After the attack, he fled, leaving her fellow workers to prepare her for burial. Another grim narrative involves Madame Belgian Jenny Bouders, who endured a savage assault by an ex-lover. Despite surviving several gunshot wounds, she ultimately fell victim to a fatal execution-style shot. Yet amidst this danger, some saloon girls found ways to defend themselves. Take Jenny Pride, for example. Known for her bravery, she protected herself and her establishment from a man with a venereal disease by taking decisive action. When he posed a threat, she did not hesitate to use her revolver, thereby safeguarding both herself and her business. The gender disparity of the Old West. In the backdrop of these stories was a significant demographic detail: men vastly outnumbered women. This imbalance further complicated the social dynamics of the time, often amplifying the challenges faced by saloon girls and other women in the region. Saloon owners' dilemma: protecting their investment. In the rough and tumble environment of the Old West, becoming a saloon girl could provide a woman with a relatively stable income. Yet, for many, this wasn't seen as a long-term career path. The frequent interactions with the numerous bachelors who came seeking their fortunes on the frontier meant that romance and the possibility of marriage were never far from a saloon girl's reality. This potential for love was a double-edged sword for saloon owners, who recognized that, if a saloon girl were to fall for a patron and opt to marry, they'd lose a valuable member of their team. To counteract this risk, some saloon proprietors instituted policies to limit how long a male customer could spend with any one saloon girl. The intention was to prevent close bonds from developing, thus keeping the women at arm's length, emotionally speaking. The economics of flirtation and sobriety. Saloon girls were pivotal in providing entertainment and companionship to the men who wandered into Western bars, seeking solace or adventure. As part of the courtship ritual, it was common for men to offer to buy drinks for these engaging women. This presented a conundrum for the saloon owners. They needed their employees to stay alert and maintain decorum to ensure the establishment ran smoothly and profits weren't lost to drunkenness. A shrewd solution emerged. When a patron bought a drink for a saloon girl, the quick-thinking owner would substitute the alcoholic drink with a non-intoxicating substitute, such as tea or colored water, masquerading as whiskey or another spirit. This clever ruse allowed the saloon girls to partake in the social aspect of drinking, without the risk of becoming inebriated, thus preserving their poise, wit, and the saloon's bottom line. As the saloon girls adeptly managed these delicate interactions, they contributed not just to their own livelihoods but also to the colorful and complex tapestry of Old West society. The peril of pregnancy for saloon girls. Within the unforgiving landscape of the Old West, saloon girls grappled with a host of adversities, and one of the most formidable was the threat of an unintended pregnancy. For women earning their living in saloons, pregnancy could mean a sudden end to their income and the onset of a perilous journey. Historical records, including findings from archaeological excavations of brothels, have revealed some disturbing practices, such as the use of syringes to administer dangerous substances like mercury, arsenic, and vinegar in attempts to terminate pregnancies or treat venereal diseases. Many brothels had under-the-table arrangements with physicians who would provide questionable treatments. The women were further constrained by the draconian Comstock Act of 1873, which outlawed not only contraceptives and related information, but also abortion services. This left saloon girls with little choice but to rely on their own resourcefulness, often resorting to homemade remedies and clandestine methods to prevent or end pregnancies. The true number of pregnancies among saloon girls during this period is shrouded in mystery, as most terminations went unreported due to the severe legal penalties imposed by the Comstock Act. When pregnancies resulted in stillbirths or miscarriages, these tragic outcomes were handled quietly, without any formal acknowledgement or proper burial. An incident in Laramie, Wyoming in 1877 starkly illustrates the predicament faced by these women. Mary Teen and a couple, Mr. and Mrs. Thomas Wicks, were charged with the failure to provide a lawful burial for a fetus, presumably Mary's. Cases like this underscore the harsh and stigmatized circumstances surrounding pregnancies among women of the saloon. Despite the obstacles, some saloon girls succeeded in leaving the profession to raise their children, often doing so in obscurity to avoid social ostracism. Laura Evans from Colorado is a case in point. Her daughter Lucille was raised in silence regarding her mother's true occupation, with Laura described merely as a landlady. As dance hall girls, these women lived through an era that offered few choices and even fewer safeguards, making their survival and resilience all the more remarkable. Dance hall girls, the rhythms of earning in the Old West. Dance halls added a vibrant layer to Old West entertainment, featuring lively music and the allure of dance hall girls. These women were compensated to dance with men, providing a semblance of romance and friendship to the often isolated male settlers. A typical arrangement involved patrons buying a dance ticket, usually for $1, which granted them the pleasure of a dance with one of the hall's female employees. Dance hall girls capitalized on every ticket sold and also received a cut from the beverages they persuaded their dance partners to buy. This business model enabled dance hall girls to accumulate a significant income, particularly for those who were highly sought after, allowing them to potentially out-earn many men in just one evening. With the ability to participate in up to 50 dances a night, their earnings could rival or surpass a man's monthly wage. Venereal disease, the hidden scourge of the Old West. The Old West, often romanticized for its rugged individualism and sense of adventure, was also fraught with less discussed perils, notably venereal diseases. Sexually transmitted infections, STIs, such as syphilis and gonorrhea, were rampant and posed serious health risks to the population, especially to those in the sex trade. Prostitutes, sometimes referred to as soiled doves or saloon girls, were particularly vulnerable to these diseases, with syphilis ominously termed the calamity due to its chronic nature and lack of effective treatments. In the pre-penicillin era, the remedies available were far from safe. Mercury-based treatments like calomel were common, despite their toxic side effects, including excessive salivation, sweating, dry mouth, vomiting, and diarrhea, symptoms indicative of mercury poisoning. The impact of STIs was not confined to the woman who bore the brunt of the stigma. Men who frequented saloons and brothels often transmitted these infections to their wives and other partners. A poignant incident in 1907 underscores the desperation wrought by these conditions. 19-year-old Anna Groves acquired a venereal disease from a patron. When the man refused to help her, Anna, driven by desperation and rage, attempted to shoot him through a saloon window in Wyoming. Though her shot missed, the incident led to her arrest, and the story was documented by Laramie's semi-weekly Boomerang, highlighting her dirty medical situation. Despite her guilty plea and expressed regret, Anna was sentenced to 2 years in prison. However, her case garnered attention, and after 5 months, she was pardoned due to her rapidly declining health. The two realms of sex work in the Old West. In the Old West, sex work manifested in two main arenas: the more controlled environment of brothels and parlor houses, and the precarious world of street-based sex work. Contrary to some modern perceptions, sex work was often a recognized profession, particularly in territories without robust legal frameworks. It's estimated that around 25% of women in some areas engaged in sex work, finding employment in regulated establishments or as independent operators. Brothels and parlor houses, often marked by red lanterns, offered a variety of services and enticements, such as gaming and dancing, to draw in clientele. Women in these establishments usually had the protection of bouncers, which provided a measure of security. On the flip side, street-based sex workers contended with more dangers, lacking the safety nets of their brothel-based counterparts. Yet, age did not necessarily end a woman's career in sex work. Even as they moved beyond the conventional age of desirability, many found opportunities in smaller, more discreet houses, continuing to work for the same patrons who frequented their earlier places of employment. The risks of sexually transmitted diseases were an unspoken part of the profession, with workers having to contend with the health hazards that came with their line of work. Despite the challenges, these women navigated the complexities of the Old West with resilience, often under the alias of innocuous titles like Katie. While behind closed doors, they faced the full spectrum of their profession's realities. The stigma of shady ladies. Shady ladies of the Old West often faced severe discrimination, their plight overshadowed by the stigma of their profession and the diseases that came with it. Their struggles serve as a stark reminder of the human cost behind the facade of the untamed frontier, In the 19th century's conservative society, where sexuality was tightly interwoven with strict moral codes, women in sex work, often labeled as shady ladies, were seen as a threat to societal values. Despite the stigma, for many women, especially those facing widowhood or other adversities, sex work presented a critical means of survival, allowing them to provide for themselves and their dependents. The cost for their services varied significantly, with prices ranging from a mere dollar to upwards of $50. Coping with isolation, substance abuse among saloon girls. The life of a saloon girl in the Wild West was far from the glitz portrayed in tales of the frontier. It was laden with challenges that took a toll on their physical and emotional health. Isolated from family and friends, many sought refuge from loneliness and despair in alcohol and drugs, leading to a high incidence of mental health issues and substance dependency. The accessibility of these substances within saloons only exacerbated the issue, often trapping these women in a cycle of addiction. During the holiday season, particularly Christmas, the emotional strain heightened, resulting in a spike in suicide rates. Some saloon owners and madams exploited this vulnerability, using addiction as a means to control their workers, further entrenching them in a life they could not easily escape. Notable historical figures such as Calamity Jane are testament to the troubled existence of those caught in the web of addiction. Jane's raucous lifestyle, heavily influenced by alcohol, became a focal point for the press and later historians. Another tragic figure, Celia Ann Maddie Blaylock, succumbed to addiction after her relationship with legendary lawman Wyatt Earp crumbled. Devastated and grappling with chronic migraines, Maddie's reliance on laudanum, an opiate, grew. After Earp left, her life spiraled downward, eventually leading to her return to sex work and, ultimately, to her suicide. The illusion of freedom for saloon girls. The perception of saloon girls as free spirits belies the reality of strict rules imposed by both employers and local laws. Money was the lifeblood of their profession, with personal success hinging on their ability to charm and entertain patrons. In locales like the Klondike, dance hall girls were incentivized to boost alcohol sales by receiving tokens for each drink bought by customers, which they could exchange for money. Dances typically cost between 75 cents and $1, and the earnings were usually shared with the saloon owner. Prostitutes had various financial arrangements. Some shared their income with the madam in exchange for room and board. Others paid rent for room use at their discretion, and some lived full-time in the brothels. In addition to these financial obligations, saloon girls often had to pay regular fines and license fees that contributed to the city's coffers. Cities like St. Louis, Missouri, even passed social evil ordinances that mandated permits for saloon girls. Furthermore, prostitutes were required to have a health certificate from a city physician, adding another cost to their already burdened lives. Rivalries and competition in the saloons. In the saloons and dance halls of the Old West, saloon girls faced intense competition, which sometimes escalated into violent encounters. The fight for money, possessions, and the affections of patrons could lead to brawls and, in some cases, fatalities. The industry's environment did not encourage stable or supportive relationships, often breeding jealousy and animosity among the women. Carol Lee Bowers, an author documenting the Old West, described the cutthroat atmosphere in places like Laramie, Wyoming, where suspicion and hostility were common, making it difficult to forge genuine, lasting friendships. With limited opportunities to socialize outside their profession, saloon girls often found even their relationships with each other to be fraught with tension. Legendary disputes among so-called soiled doves have woven themselves into the fabric of Wild West lore. In El Paso, Texas, Madams Etta Clark and Big Alice Abbott's rivalry turned violent when one of Alice's workers switched allegiances to Etta, resulting in a shootout that left Alice injured. The newspapers of the day added to the sensationalism by botching the report, erroneously stating Alice was shot in the public arch instead of public arch. Another infamous rivalry occurred in Leadville, Colorado, between Madams Molly May and Sally Purple. Residing next to each other, Their competition reached a climax with a gunfight that later authors Vardy Fisher and Opal Laurel Holmes dubbed the Battle of the Painted Ladies. Even the renowned Denver Madam Maddie Silks was not immune to conflict, getting into a public fistfight with Katie Fulton by the South Platte River, an event that drew a crowd and showcased the intense rivalries that could exist among women of the saloon. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more untold tales from history.